Hello and welcome to another episode of the CG Garage. This is episode number 492, featuring Debbie Kennard and Ron Cohen. They were the line producers on Ray Tracing for the Win, the short film that we produced over at Chaos with Martini Giant. It was great to have them on. A lot of people may not actually know what a line producer does. Well, you're about to learn, but they were absolutely critical, one of the most important people involved in the production of this short. They helped come up with the budget, manage the people, manage the crew, take care of insurance. I mean, there's a huge amount of work that needs to be done through line producers, and honestly, these guys were really, really great. So Debbie, I met her through our mutual good friend Donna Smith, and Debbie was able to help us out. She got on board on the project very, very, very early and sort of helped figure out the budgets and everything else. Debbie comes from a huge amount of experience, right? Her first film was as a PA on John Carpenter's The Thing. I mean, just think about that. And it's really great, all the amazing experience and stories. Oh my God, she's got so many stories. It was really, really cool to have her on. She unfortunately was not able to work on the actual shoot days at Orbital. And so she helped us by getting Ron involved, and Ron came on board to help us out, and was also fantastic to work with. Also has a huge amount of experience. One of his earliest films was working on Dark Knight Rises. But yeah, he comes from a huge amount of experience. He was actually an actor before he started as a producer. So it was really cool to have him on and to hear all of these stories. But honestly, line producers are very, very important. They're a critical part of figuring out how things are going to get done. And if you think about virtual production itself, a lot of people seem to separate the CG from the non-CG part. But virtual production, really, you kind of have to bring this all together. And they are very critical to think about how things are going to happen in terms of actually doing all of the CG work that's going to be on the screen, that's going to be shot at that time. So it was really, really cool to sort of think about where they fit in this process. So thank you so much, Ron and Debbie, for being there and being part of this amazing project. Speaking of which, if you guys have not actually seen the short, I highly recommend you guys do it. Just go to YouTube, look up Ray Tracing for the Win or Ray Tracing FTW. You'll be able to see the short there. And we also have a behind the scenes as well, so you can check that out. We'll put the links in the description of this podcast, which will be cool. But yeah, definitely go check it out. The behind the scenes is really, really good. You really get to see what was done, because a lot of people actually watched the short and they didn't realize that most of what they're looking in the background was actually all CG that was live done on screen, so or in camera. So really cool. Definitely go look at that. Okay, we have a couple of announcements of some events coming up. All this can be found at chaos.com/events. We will be at Autodesk University October 15th through the 17th in San Diego. So if you are going to be at AU, we would love to see you there. We also have a Chaos Unboxed event happening October 17th as well. And something that's not actually in the events descriptions as of right now, but should be pretty soon. But just in case, I want to let you guys know that there are going to be two VES events that I will be involved with, along with Daniel Thron, the director of Ray Tracing for the Win. And if you happen to be a VES member, we would love to see you. They are going to be in London on October 16th and Berlin on October 25th. So if you happen to be a VES member and you want to know more about how we produced Ray Tracing for the Win, or want to know more about Project Arena, I think we might even be able to have some live demos of the product of Project Arena. We'd love to see you there. So definitely come and check us out. Again, that's going to be in London, October 16th, and Berlin, October 25th. Now, if you guys want to know more about the podcast, you guys know what to do, but our podcast page is chaos.com/CG Garage. We have a Facebook page as well, which is facebook.com/CG Garage Podcast. And big announcements. We actually have moved all of our podcasts to a new YouTube channel. So if you'd like to follow us on YouTube, please do. It's brand new. It's at youtube.com/@CG Garage Podcast. Again, youtube.com CG Garage Podcast. Yes, yeah, please follow us there. All the podcast videos will be posted there from now on. We're trying to separate them, I guess, from Chaos, as there's been some confusion about, the podcast and everything. So anyway, our own podcast YouTube channel. How exciting is that? Now, if you guys have ideas of podcasts and suggestions, we've been getting some great ones, which we will be following up on soon. But we'd love to hear from you. labs@chaos.com is our email. Again, I suggest you guys do that there. labs@chaos.com. But for now, please enjoy episode number 492 featuring Debbie and Ron.
Welcome to another CG Garage where the Chaos Group talks. You'll know it's over when the last bucket drops. We're gonna fire off rays in high dynamic range. We know that ambient occlusion is passe. Global illumination won't lead you astray. And while image-based lighting is really swell, you need to make sure everything has Fresnel.
I'm glad you guys were able to do this. And did you guys all, Ron, you weren't able to make it this short because you just got off a flight. Debbie, you've been stuck in Atlanta, so you weren't able to come to the premiere. But you guys all saw the short, right?
Yes.
Is it
I
short?
watched it quite a few times, to be honest with you. I did. Yes.
Yeah. It was, can you imagine that it would look as good as it did when we first started this whole process?
No. I really, really, really felt I was in the mountains. I really felt that I was on a train. And I really felt that the surroundings, I felt like I was in the middle of Arizona in the deserts or the western town. I never thought I was on a bloody stage in Burbank, California.
But it was actually downtown LA.
Oh, was it downtown?
Yeah.
It was downtown.
Same.
Glendale. Well, it's that Glendale.
No, that's the Fuse stage we were at. That was the other
That's
stage.
right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, so the Fuse stage was this when we were at the Orbital stage where we shot this, which was downtown.
Right. I got the stages wrong. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, but it didn't feel like it at all,
No.
which I think is great. I mean, that's also, I do want to credit the technology, but I also think that most of it is the camera crew that knew how to get that stuff looking perfect. Yeah, they exposed it correctly, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's all about correct exposure. But I do want to tell this little story about, how I was like, Vlado came to me. He's like, okay, we're going to make a short. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to make a short and I'm going to produce it. And that's what he said. He wanted me to produce it. And I was like, I went to Donna, our good friend Donna. And I said, Donna, I don't know what to do. And she looked at me and she goes, well, Chris, sounds to me like you need a line producer. You need to figure out this budget. You need to figure out how you're going to make those dollars work. And because it was completely out of my element, right? If you ask me to bid, $100 million visual effects show, just the visual effects, I can do that. But all the other stuff, I get really, really confused. And I didn't know. And so she set up a meeting and she goes, oh, I know exactly who you need to talk to. We're going to talk to Debbie. Let's all go to lunch. Let's go to the Fanny's, which is, I've had many lunches there. So what did she tell you, Debbie? What did she tell you when she said, you got to meet Chris?
God bless. Donna, I absolutely adore and love. We all know her history and who she is and what she brings to the table. But she says, Debbie, I've got a special project for you. You've got to work with these wonderful men. She couldn't say enough. Between you and Daniel, she just went on and on and on. She says, please, join us for lunch, have a lovely time. You've got to meet these people. This is something that you want to do. She goes, you're so wrapped up, basically the operational or the financial, you'll get to work with the creative people you really want to do. And that's, she focused more on your creativity, Chris. She focused on Daniel's creativity. She focused on your vision, Daniel's, Eric that she knew of, and bringing what Eric brought to the table, of course, tremendously. But it was more about visually what you guys see in the future and what you can do for the motion picture industry.
Oh, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. But what is your origin? Where did you all start getting into the movie industry?
Oh my gosh, I was John Carpenter's PA.
Yeah,
There's no topping
That's
that.
my
there's no topping that. So
It's-
what was your first movie?
Oh, God, The Thing.
The Thing. Yeah.
Thing. And I was going to school and oh my God. And I was like, who are these people? What is this? I mean,
Did you go to film school to do that?
so I was going to UCLA
Okay.
at the time, and I was taking night classes and working at the same time. And it was unbelievable because I didn't realize the hours. I didn't realize what I was doing. It was such a, how should I say it, getting your hands dirty and you're green and you're learning. But John Carpenter was amazing to me.
Yeah.
Larry Franco was amazing to me. Barry Bernardi was amazing to me. Oh my God, Dean Cundy was our cinematographer.
Yeah.
Who, oh my God, lovely to me. And I think what they did is they saw somebody who wanted to work and learn. So they kind of, it just kept growing and growing and take you under your wing. But I
Right.
think when you show up on time, do your work, go home, people are willing to teach you.
Did you like that process of figuring out how to do things?
I'll be honest with you, it was more getting the lunches and the dry cleaning.
Well, but isn't that a thing to learn to do?
Yes,
Like,
yes.
yeah.
I think what I learned most
Yeah.
was ask questions.
Right.
Don't, listen to it. And I know this sounds maybe a little strange what I'm saying, but there were so many more men on the set at that time. It was the 80s. They were so engaging that they wanted to teach people. They were more open to giving them their knowledge, and what they bring to the table. But I think it was more about your work ethic, your integrity. And the harder you worked, the more you showed your interest and the more you did the work, they engaged more.
Right.
And I found that John was amazing. I found all of them were very, very, they were brilliant, but the creativity it was amazing to be around. And at that
Yeah.
time, there wasn't green screen. There wasn't VFX artists. Oh, don't worry. Well, we'll get a blue screen. We'll get a green screen. We'll do an LED. Well,
Right.
there was no such thing. So everything was practical. And that's what I learned from was the hard work does pay off. It does.
It does. And I think people I mean, you guys can correct me about this, but I think people underappreciate the quote unquote grunt work, PA work. I can't tell you how many PAs or people that I knew as PAs or coordinators that had helped me on show that I've had on this podcast because they're now like heads of
CEOs.
studios.
Yep.
And that's in a 15-year period, Like one of my coordinators on Oblivion, which wasn't that long ago, she's now head of studio at Third Floor.
Whoa.
Right?
Amazing.
And she's really great. She's really great and very good. And same thing, like another friend of mine who was a coordinator for me on Stealth. He's now the head of all virtual production at DNEG.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah. And
But-
so and I think they do exactly what you said. You sit and you listen and you pay attention to what's going on, right?
Yeah. I think it's very important to be a sponge.
Yeah.
I really, really, really do. And I do believe there's a lot of people, and I still believe today, even today, 2024, that there are people that love to share their knowledge. The people that are amazing. 3 years ago, I met a wonderful man at Ridley Scott's producer, Mark Huffam. Oh my gosh. The man just shared. It was like the knowledge, and I've already been in the business 30 years.
Right.
Everything he did was nothing but, you're on the same plane with me. You're my partner. You're working with me, and you work together. And I think when you find people like that are humble, that want to share, you've got a winning lottery ticket.
Yeah.
And so the time that they give to make sure you give back.
Yeah, that's true, right? You've got to pay it forward. Like that's
Yes,
a big thing,
yes.
right? And so I think that's important. I certainly have learned that. Certainly learned that I need to treat everyone with respect all the way up from the top and bottom, all the same. If you treat everyone the same, then then I think you'll do well. But so Ron, how did you get into this? How did you ended up being this? Because I mean, you told me we were sitting down. We had like a 5-minute time during lunch where you and I could chat, and you started telling me your story. I was like, oh, this is actually really good. You had a background in acting, right?
Yeah, I was an actor. I didn't actually want to be in production at all. Not on my radar. And I studied theater and did all that and came to LA with colleagues and did lots of theater and was really happy. And then I realized, I actually need to make a living at some point because theater's never going to do that. And my friends were doing a film with a producer named Andrew Lazar, who went on to do American Sniper and many things. But at the time, Andrew had a little beautiful film called Fellini Black and White that he couldn't get made. He was a studio producer. Mm-hmm. So he had this little film that my colleagues came on to try to maybe put together. And it was Antonio Banderas and Emily Watson and Peter Dinklage, and really incredible script. And I was very naive and thought, oh my God, I'm going to be in production in a week. Didn't get made, still not made. So,
those films exist.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, I optioned my first film and I attached Lena Headey by accident, and I was like, "Great, this is all," and then still also not made.
Right.
And I started working for other producers and stuff, and I realized that a lot of the guys I was working for just didn't understand physical production at all.
Right.
So I had a friend at the studio at the time, and I kind of was picking his brain. He's like, "You should go. You should learn it." So actually, my first job was on Dark Knight Rises.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I mean, I was PA like 318, like downtown, and I was working at a commercial company at the same time. So I would like work in the day and then go downtown and like stand on a street corner for like 16 hours, by myself. But it was an amazing experience because actually to see I mean, I didn't know what I was seeing, but now looking back, to see such a massive set run so efficiently and smoothly and incredibly. It was a great start. And so from there, I, as you do, worked on set and then went into commercials and then ran a commercial company and then went back to film. And, as happens, here I am.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. So we're going to get in. How did you meet Debbie? Like, how did you guys connect?
Debbie?
Basically, we were both doing reshoots on a horror film for a production company, and we were introduced through the producer that brought the show to the production company. Sure. And we befriended each other, and it just continued to keep growing. Awesome. And it was lovely working with Ron because he did a great job.
Well, and I will say Debbie took over right when I started, and without getting into details, like, it was night and day between who I was dealing with and then this person who came in who was like amazing and kind, but on top of the game and knew their thing and just made the job so much easier, which is not always the case, as we all know. Yep. So it was sort of instantly like, oh, thank God. Yeah. It saved the show, in my opinion, and saved us. So. Yeah.
Well, one of the reasons we have both of you on is because, Debbie was great, and she sort of helped sort of start this whole project. And right when we were about to do our big shoot, she had way too much responsibility going on because she had working on another job. She's in Atlanta. She still is in Atlanta. Oh my God, I can't believe you're still there. So she brought Ron on to help take over and did an incredible job with a really very, very ambitious shoot. I can't believe we shot that. It was basically 3 days on that stage that we did all of that, which still shocks everyone that we did that, pull that off. But let's talk a little bit about the beginnings of this thing. When I was like, okay, we're going to do this thing. I was trying to explain the virtual production tools, try and explain how we needed to do things. And I was like, I need to figure out, maybe I need some horses. And I was very lucky that Debbie knew exactly how to do it was like, I didn't know how to budget this. I don't know how to do. And Debbie was like, I've got some ideas. So tell us a little bit about how you figured this out and how you got Phil on board on this.
Well, first of all, it was your storyline that was wonderful. And the spoof of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kids and the Western. And I was like, okay, And as you already know, I'm an animal junkie, as
Yeah.
we all know, right?
Yeah.
So my friend Phil Smith has been an animal trainer for, God, maybe 50 years in the business now,
That
45.
sounds about right. Yeah.
And he's just, the person that's very soft spoken and very kind, and he's a horse whisperer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I called him and I said, okay, I need this, I need that, I need this, I want. And I met him many years ago on a TV series called Medicine Woman. So
Yeah.
my mind went more towards what you wanted and what Phil could bring to the table for us.
Right.
And I think the actual operational side and where you wanted to go, it's the years of the crew that I've worked with, or the people that I've met.
Right.
Over the years, I've met some amazing people in this industry.
Right.
So it was them giving back during that time.
Yeah, for sure. Just because I want to get into a little bit about it, but in order for the context for people, so I'm sorry, I jump around a little bit, but in order to give context to people, especially some of the people in my audience who may not actually understand the differences between all the producer roles and what a line producer does specifically. So either one of you guys can you jump in, explain what a line producer is and how that role is different from let's say a producer, an executive producer, and what that all means, because that people may not actually know the difference. Line producer is very specific and does some very important stuff, right?
Ron?
Yeah.
Oh, there's so much.
I think that if you're going to simplify it in the most simplified of terms, a line producer is the one, if you're putting it in terms of building a house, there's the architect who will design the house. Mm-hmm. Line producer then takes that drawing and goes, okay, this is what it's going to cost. This is the crew. We're going to put the crew together. We're going to manage the crew. We're going to build the house. They're the person that takes the drawings and digests it and puts together an entire structure, plan, runs the plan, delivers the plan, comes back to you and says, we can't afford this. We can't afford that. How do we do this? How do we do that? Brings you, as Debbie did, like Phil's a great example. Phil, if we were to do this on a normal scale, would have been not feasible at all. So it's also coming in, as Debbie did, calling in favors, finding out how to, lean into all the things you do for what you need to do. So I think a line producer is literally the person who will put the budget together, manage a budget, and then physically manage the entire shoot from A to Z.
The line stands for like the line items that you're counting. It's like literally like It's the accounting, right? It's the accounting of the thing. Even though you have accountants on shows, et cetera, a line producer knows like everything that's happening, who's accountable for that, how much does it cost, like everything, right?
The line producer is a poor schlub that wakes up at like 2 a.m. goes, oh, I could have done a better deal on that one. Shit.
Yeah. It's true. And in fact, the problem solving that I was able to go through with both you guys has been absolutely amazing. Yes. And we did go to Phil's. We did a lot. We knew we needed to get that done before we went on the stage because we knew we need to have some elements that we were going to use inside of it, specifically the guys on the horses running after them. But we said, since we're going to be there anyway, we're going to film a bunch of things since we're going to have a horse, you might as well film horses, right? And get a bunch of other establishing shots, or not establishing shots, inserts that we needed to create in there as well. So we had a day at Phil's to do all of that. And it turned out really great. I mean, honestly, Phil's was great. But Phil continued to play a role in the entire thing far beyond that day, right? Because our situation was we had to build this train car, and that was a struggle. So Debbie, tell us a little bit about your ideas about this train car, because it was this is going to be the most expensive part of the whole thing, right? Was building this train car. How did we solve that?
It's very funny. I was just thinking, it was so funny when you said, okay, Debbie, and what's happening was we were bidding out the jobs with outside companies, and it was not within our budget, and we were having issues, and I was going.
And they weren't working very well with Eric's designs. Like they were like,
yes,
they didn't respond well. Eric had made a system to make this work, and they were like, no, we're just going to build the whole thing, and it's going to be way expensive.
Way. They weren't working with the parameters of the stage size, what we needed, and of course, the costs. It was 3 times. And I was here in Atlanta at the time, and my mind was going, and I'm just going to be honest. I don't know what happened. Something just clicked in. Wait a minute, because Phil has the 52-acre ranch, and I thought, I got this all figured out. I'm going to move all the wagons out of the barn. I'm going to call my friend Tom Early, who's a wonderful construction coordinator who's been in the business, from his dad down to him, and I'm going to make this work. And then I'm going to save in the overhead, and I'm going to figure this out. And then I'm going to use Phil's trucks, and I'm going to haul the set. I mean, my mind was just, it was winding.
Right.
And it worked.
It worked great.
And then Tom brought his equipment, his 40-footer trailer, backed it up. Phil was like, oh my God. I said, just move over, Phil. I'm coming in. Move over.
Right.
And he was so accommodating. And then he also helped us, as you know, props, set dressing, stage rent. Everything that he gave us was tens of thousands, so much off to help you, Eric and Daniel, with your vision. He collaborates. That's the working friendships over the years that you appreciate so much. And look what came out.
Absolutely. Not only to collaborate, I mean, he really sort of was instrumental in a lot of this. Because I remember, you remember we were laughing about this, but on the day that we were shooting in Peru, and Eric, who has to make things all the time. He has to be active and doing something because that's the way his ADD brain works. He's like, I got to make a bell for this insert shot. I got to do this thing. I got to the alarm bell. And so he just started wandering around Phil's ranch, finding random parts and picking them up and saying, I'm going to turn this into a prop for an insert. And Phil was like, who is this?
Who is this guy?
And he's like, okay. And he started like, here, take my workshop. Here, there's a bench there. Here's some paint. Yeah, go ahead.
It's true. And Phil said, he says, is he all there? I said,
No.
No, but it's okay.
Yeah.
And he took the bell, when you go to Phil's office, it's the old fashioned bell where you like ring it.
Yeah.
And he says, oh, okay. And I said, well, Javier, who works for Phil, was standing there, and he says, can we unscrew that? So he took Phil's bell off of his door. And Phil is looking at me, and I was laughing so hard because Eric was in like Happy Land. So all over the place with all the wagons and the horses and the tack room. And he was like a kid in a candy store.
Yeah.
He was making us laugh because he's funny. He's very animated.
He's very funny, yeah.
And so Phil he looked at me, he says, am I going to get that bell back? I says, oh, no. Okay. And Phil just walks off. He was more focused on the donuts on the craft service table. That was more important than the bell coming off of his door.
I think the thing that also was amazingly kind about Phil is that we were building the train set there. And so once a week we'd go over to see Tom and see how things are going, see if he needed anything, and see any decisions need to be made or whatever. And one of the things that my son, who's also a big animal person like you, Debbie, was always so jealous that we went to shoot at Phil's place because he heard about all the incredible animals that are at Phil's Animals, right? And he literally has everything from flamingos to reindeer on that ranch, right? Like everything is on that ranch. And so finally one day, it's like, okay, Brady, my son, it's like, you can come with me we're going to go see the wagon. You can check it out. And we arrived there, and we're going to this section. We're talking with Richard, and Daniel and I are looking at the thing, and Brady's looking around at all these animals. And there's still tons of activity. People, animal handlers, people on trucks moving around, but he wants to go see the animals. Phil looks at me and goes, is that your son? And I said, I'm sorry, he's not going to get in the way. He's like, no, that's okay. He just stopped whatever he was doing and spent about 45 minutes with my son.
That's Phil.
Walking around, showing him the animals, helping Brady, showing him how to feed the animals, like just hang out with him. And I was like, what? It's like, it's so kind,
Yeah, he's really good with kids.
Yeah.
He does care. He's He's really good with them. Some of the workers that work on the ranch, he's amazing with their children. Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was so cool. It was so cool. So it was a great experience. I do also want to bring in, because we were struggling at the very, very beginning of this. We were trying to figure out how it was going to look, and we were struggling a little bit with figuring out the camera and the DP on who we were going to work on. And we were basically, we'll shoot it this way because, we're kind of guerrilla guys and we can do it this way. And you're like, Chris, I think you need to consider using a real camera and a real DP. And he said, I have some connections with the ASC and I think I can make this happen. So tell us a little bit about your relationship with Richard and how that sort of bringing him on as well.
When we were talking originally and who we were going to use, and your vision was bigger than what the cinematographer Daniel wanted to work with. And I respected, but you wanted more. You needed more. You needed more to substantiate the vision. And to me, because of the years that I've worked very closely with directors that are very heavy with still photography or filming, it's important to me that what you see on that screen, it's eye candy. Sure. I'm very visual myself. If you ask me, Debbie, can you go make that cake? Until show me a picture or what it is, it's harder for me even.
Sure.
Well, when you were asking and Daniel was asking and Eric was asking, I was very, very fortunate. 2005, 6, I can't remember, somewhere around there. I was invited to the ASC to oversee a still photography, basically what they had at the clubhouse and what to do with it. A wonderful man who is probably one of the most iconic in my career was Owen Roisman. He's French Connection, Tootsie, Exorcist, Wyatt Earp. I mean, I can keep going on, on and on and on.
Yeah.
And he invited me and he says, what would you do with this still photography division? What do you want to do? And he let me run with it. At the same time, I met Richard Crudo, who was president of the ASC at the time. Mm-hmm. And Owen had just stepped down and Richard took over his term. Right. It was his turn. And they just believed in me. And I don't know what to say. It just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then there was John Toll and Russell Carpenter and Dean Semler and Dean Cundy and Roy Wagner. It just kept getting bigger and bigger. And I don't know, they engaged and it worked out so well. So I developed these relationships with all these men over the years. So I work with them on production, or I work with them with the ASC, or also the still photography division that they allow me to work with them on. Mm-hmm. But Richard, I thought he would be a really good fit because of the men that he's worked with in his career. Gordon Willis. I mean, from Gordon Willis to Owen to, I can just go on and on and on, these Academy Award-winning cinematographers. And I thought with the LED wall of where you wanted to go, the vision, what we had, and what he could bring to the table because of his experience, I thought that was the win-win. So that's why I sold you to Richard and Daniel and Eric. And it
was actually, I mean, looking back, it was even more brilliant than I think I can imagine. And the reason I think that Richard was so good is that he's actually not that technical.
No, he's very creative.
He's very, very creative. He knows exactly how to expose something correctly, but he's not that technical, right? Which is, and he was on the podcast or previously with Esther, right? And so I had Esther and him together, and he was like telling us, I was like, I barely know how to turn these cameras on. Esther does all that for me.
Yes.
But he says, my job is I know what was that?
I'm happy you said that after the shoot, not before.
No, he said he's proud to admit it, right? He says, my responsibility is what hits that sensor. Like, I know what hits that sensor and how it needs to go and how to expose correctly. But, all the mechanics of all the wireless whatever is like, it's a lot to digest.
Yeah, I will say to you, like, just with a little bit of, I saw him on the stage, he did understand enough to know the shutter speed and the LED and that kind of convergence.
Of course.
No, but I'm
Absolutely.
saying that was impressive for me because I hadn't shot on an LED wall.
Right.
So to watch him understanding the mechanics and the shutter rate and the LED frame rate versus there was a technicality there that
he does
incredibly
know
specific.
that. He just doesn't know which button on the machine to push because it's too many buttons.
Just push them all. That's how you go.
You're like, I need it at F whatever or T whatever. He'll know exactly what he needs to do. It's just that the execution is complicated. But I think what was so there's a couple things that we really appreciated from bringing Richard on board, thanks to Debbie, is that one, Martini Giant guys, the Eric and Daniel and I, we're just big film geeks. We just talk about movies constantly, and we really, really love the history of film and how things are shot and thought about. And Richard is 100% the same geek as we are, right? And apparently now, he listens to every episode of Martini Giant and then texts us about his thoughts about it as we go along. So he really is a big film geek like us. But the other thing, and you mentioned Tootsie, Debbie, at one point during the shoot, we're like talking about how to shoot something, and Daniel looks at Richard, says, it's like, I want that shot, like in Tootsie, and goes, got it. I know exactly the kind of shot you want. And that's a kind of shorthand creatively that's really important, I think, that we achieved, right? But also, we shot this like an old Western. We didn't shoot it like a modern Apple TV show. We shot it, right? Mm-hmm. High contrast, not afraid to overexpose the background, right?
Yep.
We shot it like old, and I think that's kind of the appeal, is that we told Richard he can do it that way. He doesn't have to make sure everything's in focus and everything's exposed.
And I think because of the years that he's been in the business, I thought creatively he would bring the look that you were looking for,
right?
For that edgy look of a Western and what you wanted. I felt it was the thing that I find really, really, really important today, even more. When the visual effects supervisor and the cinematographer blend, that's your winning lottery ticket.
Yes.
When you have the production designer, and also the visual effects supervisor and the DP, just throw the cash in. God bless.
Right.
The vision of the three people, it's so, so important. The director, yes, 100%, but you guys are setting up those shots. You guys are making the world. And
right.
And it was very funny, but back to Richard, with all due respect, Chris, sometimes you guys talk so techie. Richard would look at me sometimes as I'd say, don't ask me. I don't know. I don't, all I know is what I see in front of me. But
right.
We would listen to what you were saying. And at the same time, then you would simplify it. I would see it with Richard or simplify it with me when I said, Chris, I don't understand
what
you're saying. That's what makes it work.
Yeah.
When people take the time, back to my thing when I was a PA, Chris.
Right.
Take the time to learn. If I don't know something, I'm the first to ask you.
Yes.
But I watched how you and Richard communicated. I watched how Daniel and Richard communicated. And I watched how Eric, it worked.
Yeah.
You gentlemen hit, it was a winning lottery ticket with the four of you. It was amazing to watch.
Yeah, I think it was great. And the first thing that Richard said is like, let's do another one.
Yeah.
And just to sing Richard's praise as well, the other thing you get with Richard is his crew. Because he brought on the gaffer and the grip, and they were just so knowledgeable, professional, and easy to work with, and got exactly what you needed, but knew the budget and worked around it. Like, I don't know, Chris, and you probably do know, but how lucky we were to get the crew we did.
Oh, I am 100%. This is why I want to make sure we talk about it, because I think this was far beyond what I thought it was going to. When I first started this, it was like, it's going to look a little gritty, and that's cool. And then it's like, no, this looks like it's $100 million film, right? It looks gorgeous. Yeah. And a lot of it has, I know we have relationships at Panavision that we really utilize, and that's going to give you a certain quality of not just cameras, but lenses that we were able to work with, right? And those lenses were, oh my God, they're beautiful lenses.
Yes. Everybody stepped up with me with Panavision. Everybody. It's, Jody, everybody. The one thing I have to say though, like sometimes when you believe in a passion project or you believe in something, call and ask, and they will work with you. Panavision is spectacular. There's plenty of other camera houses too, but I don't know, there's something about Panavision, but I think it's more me because of the ASC and over the years working with them.
Sure.
They've always done me right. Always.
Right.
Oh, they've always made it work. And the gentlemen, when I've worked with them, just talk.
Right.
Oh, and if you can't, you have to give and take.
Sure.
You can't just have it all one side. And I think that's part of the producing side, whether you be yourself an executive producer, Chris, whether you be the actual producer who actually wrote and brought the project to the table with Vlado. Sure. It's the collaboration that continues to make a winning project.
Well, let's actually talk up a little bit about the technology, because I think this is an interesting, because this was a technology thing, right? But I tried very hard for everyone to be able to be very creative and for the technology not to be in the way of anything, right? And allow for that. And so that was part of my goal, even though this is brand new tech, right? So I know that you guys have each dealt with virtual production in the past in some ways, and it's been in some cases a struggle. Let's talk a little bit about that struggle, or your experiences, each of you, with that struggle, and how you think this might have been different than that. And Ron, you've seen this way more hands-on in the shoot, but just either one of you, let me know what you guys have thoughts on this and where virtual production is problematic sometimes, right?
Ron, you want to go, or I can, whatever you fancy.
Either or, Deb.
Go ahead, Debbie.
I'll jump in.
I think I have worked on the LED walls before. The thing that's hard is the prep time. Okay? You and I both know if you do not have a solid art department to build those assets, Chris, we got a wee bit of a problem. If you have a director in a simple, nice way that changes their mind a wee bit.
A lot.
Okay, a lot. What ends up happening is you don't have time when you go on stage to make those changes.
Right.
If you have a visual effects supervisor with one vision, production designer with another vision, and a director with another, and things start changing or script changes, the money, it's really, really hard. It goes through the roof. Honestly, substantially. Right. I think when you want to use a wall of this magnitude and what you want to do, if you spend the extra time and the extra money and do it in prep, you're going to have, your physical production will be fine. But you have to make a decision in prep and stick with it.
Right.
You have to be focused, and all the people that work together to make the first day of shooting, let's say day one of shooting is going to be on a wall. You all have to be on the same page. That's the only thing that's a wee bit hard that I've seen. I've seen productions where everybody wants to use them. And then when they go and they get this wonderful element to use, they don't know how to use it. If somebody, I think when you go to use these walls, I think even for the director, even for the production designer, even for the cinematographer, like you said with Richard, Chris, if the studios would give time for somebody of your knowledge, and really, you're a genius with these walls, you are, and you allowed them the time for you to explain what this tool brings to the table and how to use it in a cost-effective way, because time is money.
Sure.
Then I think we would have a more positive flow with an LED wall.
Yeah, look, I agree. I mean, it's no different than complicated stunts. Like, you can't be figuring it out in the day, because that's when it gets incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
You know, it gets
And
incredibly
dangerous too
expensive.
with stunts.
Well,
right?
and dangerous too, but you don't. I mean, I'm just saying it's the same thing. Where it's like you don't have on the day. You have your entire crew. You
Sure.
have all this. You have all these elements that they're by the hour. You
Right.
cannot be figuring out. So as Debbie's saying, like it seems on paper like prep is expensive, but the money you end up saving is astronomically more efficient, effective, and even when you're like I saw you guys on the day adjusting like where the fulcrum was or where the sun was and little things, but it seemed like because you had prepped it and knew it so thoroughly, those
Yeah.
minor changes on the day were feasible because it was still within the context of what you guys had already prepared, thought about, put together.
Well, it was something specific that that Richard told me, and this is before we were shooting, and he was talking about the ways that films used to be shot before and the way they're shot today. And it's not specifically LED walls, but back in the day when you were shooting on film, you
35,
had
yeah.
stock that you had to deal with, and you don't waste film, right? Now
Yeah.
you can just like shoot a million hours and who cares, right? So the thing is, when you had film, you would prep, you knew exactly, you would rehearse what you were going to shoot. And so you prepped it. And now he equated it to, it's like before it used to be like a heist where you planned the whole thing out. It's like now it's like a smash and grab where you just shoot everything and hope for the editor to get it later, right? And I was like, oh, that's a good analogy. So we actually went to the clubhouse and we rehearsed every shot with him as we were doing it with Esther there, so she could take notes of like what the camera crew needed to bring and everything else, the lighting kits. And we just planned everything, right? And in terms of the digital set, we built everything. Just anything you need, it was there, right? More trees, more telephone poles, everything was there, ready to go. And that was the whole point. It's like, nothing's missing. Let me know if there's any, so that no one had to go like, oh no, we have to rebuild this whole part. Nope, it's all there.
That ties back to what Debbie said, which is what you said, which is it's all about the prep. I mean, it comes back to the prep. Like I can tell you, even with digital, you can shoot tons.
Right.
It actually ends up causing more problems often than not because you're so behind schedule because not every director, but a lot of directors overshoot. And you say things like, look, we can spend 3 hours focusing on him getting out of the car door, but that scene where they break up at the end of the day, you're going to have an hour for. So have at it. But you might want to think about where, as you said, with film, and I've only shot on film 4 times in my career, but it was amazing because it was like, you can't overshoot. You just do not have the options to.
Right.
And it makes you think about the edit. It makes you everyone should shoot on film once. It makes you a better director, producer, editor, because you have to think about what's going to end up in the edit.
Yeah. I was listening to a snippet of Werner Herzog on saying it's like, I can't understand why people are sitting here with 500 hours of footage to trying to turn it into a movie. It's ridiculous. It's like, I shot a movie. We only shot 8 hours of footage for the whole movie. And it's like, and I think that's a gift also of good, good storyboard, good previs, get it ready to go.
Is.
And then it's you're probably going to get the best performances too, because otherwise you're just shooting everything and no one's going to not really care about whichever take they're doing, right?
Right. It's the prep time. You're absolutely right, all of us. Yeah.
And what about like the looks, like of people you've noticed certain, like it's been a little bit struggle to get the kind of looks that people wanted out of LED walls. So people are like not necessarily we talked about this in the early part about like, yeah, in order for LED walls to look good, there's people are struggling with the looks of how things are. What were some of the feedback you got from directors and DPs about how LED walls looked in the past?
My understanding from the gentleman that I've worked with, in simple terms, how I'm speaking, sometimes when you would shoot at an angle, it would come out of focus. And I believe that was on the flat wall, though, Chris, not the curved.
Right.
So they were always they didn't know how to manage the out of focus on the sides.
Right.
I believe. And then basically, I think even the original setups, the time and not able to focus properly on the wall, because I still believe the training, Chris. If we had a wee bit more time for you to spend more time with Richard, do you think it would have been a little bit more? I'm going to now flip the question to you. Do you think it would have been more of an advantage for us in the long run?
I think, here's the thing I think that was important for us contextually with Richard is we didn't treat it like an LED wall. We treated it like a rear projection.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And
okay.
because
okay.
we taught, because it is.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Right? And so, except we could move the camera here, which was great.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like rear projection plus. So when we do that, Richard and Daniel and Eric and I, we're talking about some of the best rear projection shots out there. Right. And we were actually thinking about North by Northwest a lot, which has the most amazing rear projections. Like, for example, did you know the very famous shot where he's running and the plane is coming behind him is actually a rear projection?
Yep. I think in Catch a Thief too, right? The car with Grace Kelly and Cary Grant. Yes, all these. Yes. Okay.
And so when we looked at that, we were like, that's how we treat this correctly, right?
Okay.
And then specifically, Richard has always had a pet peeve about how in-car green screens look not correct, right? Mm-hmm. And so he treated that train as like, I'm going to show people how to do this correctly.
Wow.
It is true because it's distracting. When it looks bad, it's just bad. It just looks very fake.
And when we went in that train, there was a lot of things in that train that I wanted to make sure we took advantage of, right? So we put a bunch of glasses and bottles in the window, which you would never be able to do with a green screen, right? So that was one thing I wanted. But we also put a lot of schmutz and stuff on the glass so that the glass would have all these imperfections, and it caught all kinds of shiny reflectivity from not just the LED wall, but from the actual lights that we had outside as well. Mm-hmm. And when I saw the, on the stage, the first exposures of what the outside was going to look like, and I realized that the LED wall was going to be very bright, and therefore you're not always going to see everything outside. I was like, but it looks so real. It's like, that's actually the most important part, is that it looks real, right? Mm-hmm. And the outside should be bright mm-hmm. and not just, I want to see every leaf on the tree outside.
Very true.
And I think that's the thing, is that Richard is like, I'm going to light this the way all those other shots that I've been annoyed at should have been lit.
Okay. I didn't know. That's it. You just learned something today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think honestly, it's a masterclass in how to do it. Because I was just, like I mentioned, I ran into Ben Hansford at the beach today, mm-hmm. and he's like, I think Richard's probably the second best, if not one of the top, virtual production shooters ever. And I was like, based on what he did with your shoot. And I was like, wow, well, that's a big praise. So,
yeah.
It
helps that he's a good human being to go with it. It really is.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to say, yep. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. So when Debbie brought you on board on this, Ron, what were your thoughts? Like, okay, you're handed this thing.
Oh dear.
Yeah. How did it go for you?
No, look, it was good. I haven't done I've done a lot of rear projection, but not the LEDs. So there was also an excitement to see that sort of marriage of the physical and the virtual, and that I've done a lot of VFX as well. So but that element of it was, first it was exciting, and then it was like, oh God, I got to look at the budget and see how this is all going to work, because I knew we were doing it for, a limited amount because of what we were doing. But Debbie had done such a great job of teeing it and cueing it and managing it that it was honestly made my job relatively easier than it normally is. So it was really just coming in to manage this amazing moving train, this incredible crew, figuring out the budget, and as is always the case, calling in. It doesn't matter if you have, I don't know, $1 million or, 20, 50, 100 million. It's never enough.
Right.
In fact, I sat in one DGA thing with Dunkirk, And the AD was dead serious. Always like, we really had to pull up our sleeves because we could only get 150 from the studio, and it's really tough, but we made it work. And he was serious. Like that was
$150 million.
It's like $100 million, whoever it was, and all of us in DJ were like, "All right," but it was true for them, like because they're used to having more. So it was like for them, that film was really difficult.
Yeah.
Right.
But it was great. Look, it was great to jump in with you guys and the crew, and and James, who I met on that first day that I think we all had lunch. It was you guys and James,
Right.
Who's such a crazy, wonderful, interesting character.
Yeah. He had a hard time getting out of character. The problem was I needed him to, everyone, as you know, Ron, we all had to wear many, many hats, including being actors while we were on that stage. And he had a hard time coming out of character from being the crazy, boss hog character.
Yes. Yes.
To actually being a visual effects or post-production supervisor, virtual production supervisor on that, but ended up being pretty good. Now let's talk a little bit about those prep days. Were you worried, Ron, when you knew that
I was sure we were going to go over, and I didn't.
No way we could do 30 setups in one day, right?
No, I was pretty convinced Ben did an amazing job as well, but we had a lot of back and forth about we're never making our days. We're going to go. And the stage was so expensive into overtime. So we started to pad up a bit to kind of protect against those. But surprisingly, we did make our days. And I was worried about the wall. I think the day or two before we had like technical issues with the wall and the thing. And I was like,
I almost started smoking again.
Yeah. I was like, oh God.
That's a bit.
But that's
it
where
was
it
the
goes
day.
back. Yeah.
Yeah. The day before our pre-light day, Vlado and Radoslav, who's the guy who wrote the original Project Arena thing. And he flew in from Bulgaria and he was doing it, and they were setting it up, and it was almost 4:00 and the wall still hadn't seen anything on there yet. And I'm like, is this going to work? And then we're starting to talk about like, maybe we start putting video up there instead. I don't know what we're going to do. And Rado said, I didn't come all the way from Bulgaria to put video up.
Video.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. And so it came up, and then it was up, and it ran all day, 3 days, never crashed.
Never crashed. But that's always how it is, right? Like if it's bad in prep, it usually kind of comes together. If it's too smooth in prep, you should start praying. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
And also look to the credit of your crew that you like Yan and the makeup artist, like they all just showed up and they did so much. If this had been a studio shoot or union shoot, it would be Yan plus like 25. We'd still be 2 hours behind.
Yep.
And the makeup team, like they just did.
Yeah. Meredith.
So Meredith was amazing. Even just balancing SFX makeup and regular. Honestly, we were lucky for the crew that was there and how well they made it work, because it couldn't.
I gave everyone like, here's the assignment. The assignment is you have freedom to create what you feel you want to create in here. You know what the story we're trying to tell and make it happen. Right. And I think everyone felt invested creatively. And the technology was there not to get in the way. Like no one was a slave to the technology in a lot of ways, right?
Well, and to go back to what you said, to me, look, the minute we started shooting, it was not an LED wall show. It was a shoot, like any other shoot. And that's to your credit. It was just a shoot, like any other shoot, with the difficulties you run into. It's interesting to hear you say you treat it like as a rear projection, because that is what it felt like. It's like it was a shoot. We had lighting. We had the wall. I didn't feel like we were shooting a technical product shoot.
Right.
I felt like we were shooting a film, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great. I mean, and then I love the fact that, Meredith made the decision. Like, for example, Rob Niederhorst, who was the secret star of this movie with his ridiculous green screen outfit. But,
Chris, I was going to bring that up with Yan. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but...
Go ahead, tell him.
Oh, gosh. Ron, it was just wrong on so many levels. So many levels. We were out at the ranch. We all have 501s on. We all have our sneakers on. We all have our T-shirts. Everybody got dressed up at the house. Wardrobe was up at Phil's house because, Phil had we took
This was
over
our
all
first
of it.
day when we didn't know. Well, the first time we saw any costumes or
Yes.
anything. Right? Yeah.
And and Chris let Yan Yan do her thing. Rob comes down on the gator. He gets off, this tiny, slender gentleman, genius video fixer. He's in this green screen suit with these, were they red, orange balls? Red,
They were
orange,
yellow or orange pom-poms that were completely we told them just put them in the wrong place because that's the joke,
Oh.
right? Like, yeah. Some of them
Oh.
are dangling from strings, which
Yes.
is impossible to track, of course. That makes no sense, right?
There wasn't a dry eye. The whole crew was and he strutted his stuff out into that arena and went to the horse, did his thing. And Phil, he says, that's a man. He says, you wouldn't catch me dead in that outfit. That's wrong. And I couldn't stop laughing. And he strutted it and he wore it. You thought he was a top model on a runway, the way he walked around in that outfit. And Yan Yan was she was standing next to me. I says, I don't know what, it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. But yes.
But I also want to say, like, everyone brought a little bit more to it. So, like, we knew that character was the character. Yeah. So we're on stage now. So this is a couple months after we shot in Peru. We're on the stage, and we knew that Rob gets shot off. But then, after we continued to work on the previs after the stuff in Peru, and we said, you know what, we're going to bring Rob back. Yeah, we know we got shot off the horse. So we said, now he's on the train, because why not, right? So we added just one little thing of him being on the train. And so Rob now goes to makeup to get done up for being on the train. And Meredith, she read the script. She's like, wait a minute. Okay, so he shot off the horse, and now he's going to be back at the train car. So we have to bring it back. So he comes out, and he's got a bullet hole in his head. It's like, yeah, right. I shot him in the head. And he's got all this grass stuck on the side of his face because he fell off the horse. I'm like, oh, Meredith, you're brilliant. Oh, yeah. It's like so everyone got to, contribute to this whole idea of what they're doing, and it just added to it, and it just made it really funny, It did. So I just felt everyone's touch, everyone's contribution, and everyone laughing. Everyone was laughing the whole time we were making this thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's true. It's you're right. I mean, Chris, everybody got along. Everybody. It went really, really well. It did. Yeah.
Well, I love that, and I think there was a certainly eye-opener for Vlado, because, I think I mentioned to you guys that when we did the first V-Ray IRL short, and Vlado, we did that as a sort of thank you for Vlado for 10 years of V-Ray. His regret is that he never got to be on set, because he's always wanted to be on set. And he actually told me that he watches the behind-the-scenes videos of Lord of the Rings more than the actual movies itself, that he loves to see how things are made. And so he was super happy with being on set and being able to experience what that's like. And I think that's something that he sort of loves, that the art of filmmaking and being part of that getting your hands dirty. So to him, that was really cool. And for him to be able to bring technology to that table as well was really great.
Oh, lovely man. Absolutely. Chris, I don't know if I told you, but I don't know, I think it was after physical production on stage. Mm-hmm. And, I think it was in between the time when we were working to get Nicolane to do the music.
Yeah.
And he sent me an email. I'm going to be honest with you, it brought tears to my eyes. It did. I don't want to cry, think about it. It was such an endearing thank you. And, a thank you goes a long way. It really does. And you take the time. It was so, oh my God, I think about it now. It was just so, the appreciation is what, a please and a thank you. If people took a little bit more time, they do pretty all right with it, let me tell you. Yeah. They would. But he's a class act.
Yeah. He is 100% a class act, and he's
amazing gentleman.
He's a class act, and he loves doing this, and he also knows how to give people the freedom to do what they need to do when he believes that they know they can do it. So it was really kind of wonderful that he's like, all right, Chris, you can. I mean, that's a lot to hand over. It's like, Chris, you're going to produce a short, and here's a budget, which was not, it's a small budget for what we pulled off.
Budgeted,
for what we pulled. I mean, you guys, we're not going to mention the actual numbers because Vlado doesn't want to do that, but you guys can testify that was a small budget for what we pulled off, right?
It was a very small budget for what we pulled off. What we pulled off should have been much more.
Much more. Yes.
Much.
And it's not just the favors that we did. It's just because we were doing very efficiently. I know that there was efficiencies that were also involved. Am I correct?
No, and it's not just the favors. It's also the efficiencies. It's also the crew. It's also
the people.
Right.
The people, hiring good people who can do the job well.
Right. Well, a crew is what helps make it efficient.
But the other thing too, Chris, Vlado trusted your vision.
Yeah.
That's the compliment. It's just that compliment in itself was as good as the wonderful email he sent me.
Yeah.
It's amazing how he allowed us to do our thing.
I was really like testing. Is like, is at any point is he going to say?
Enough's enough. Yeah.
I don't know about shooting this or doing that, and or some of the lines we had in there, like, but no, he's like, let's do it, Yeah. So it ended up being it gave us a lot of freedom. We've gotten some very great feedback from people that are like, oh, wow.
I've seen so much on LinkedIn, Chris.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And I enjoyed it. It's nice.
I think the biggest feedback we got is like people said, finally a story.
Oh, okay.
People don't have stories anymore, even in movies. Like they're just obsessed with just lore and trying to reference another movie, and they forget about telling a story.
Fair, very fair.
But we actually, even though this was kind of a tech demo, but it was also a story that we were actually trying to tell at the same time. So it was cool.
Very much so. Yes.
Well, let's get into it before we sign off. Let's get a little bit into knowing a little bit more about what you guys are up to now, and then if you guys have anything you want to plug or talk about. So, Ron, why don't you start? What you up to these days?
What am I up to? I just finished a film. I was producing a film in Istanbul in Saudi.
Wow.
With a company called AFE and Front Row. And it was, I think, the first female-led action comedy film ever, I think, out of Saudi Arabia. It was just a really fun, bold, but fun kind of action comedy in the vein of like The Hangover or The Mexican.
Wow.
So that's the last 4 months of my life. I just got home last Thursday.
Right.
I'm jealous.
Amazing. And
Debbie,
it was
amazing. Yeah.
That sounds incredible. And do we know what the name of it is or will be, or when can we see it?
I do. There's two names. There's the proper name that I'm used to, which is Manmul Makful. Mm-hmm. But in the States, I think we're calling it My Treat. So,
okay.
My Treat.
My Treat. And when is it expected to be released?
We'll finish post in January, so probably March is my guess.
Okay, that sounds really interesting. Debbie, what are you up to?
I'm in Atlanta. I'm working on a TV series.
Yeah.
Long hours, quite large, very substantial.
Okay.
It's a big project, but the crew is amazing.
Yeah.
The people are very kind. I'm enjoying it. I have my animals with me, so I'm okay.
Yes.
But I'm homesick and I want to come home.
How are your puppies, by the way?
The puppies are all good.
Good.
Yep. But this is a business. Sometimes you go on location for 2 months, and sometimes you go for a year. Yeah. And this is our business. And I'm hoping to come back to LA soon, and I hope that things get better for people. I wish the best. I believe 2025 will be a better year for people. I believe things will be more solid, and I just care about people having a job and working. That's my thing. I'm very lucky I'm working.
I've and maybe I'm, too much of an optimist, but I actually believe that
I
this
like that.
flux, this
No.
flux is going to be it's going to be a transition. And I certainly think that some people will survive better than others who are willing to go through that transition. But I think we're going to come out of it as a completely new Hollywood. And I think that
Oh,
that's going to be interesting. It's very similar to me to what happened in the 1960s, I think.
okay.
There was 1960s was the last time we had a strike that was similar to this. I
Yeah.
believe that
Yeah.
Ronald Reagan was president of SAG at that time.
Mhm.
But I also think that, there was a time back then when people were actually tired of seeing Western and Doris Day musicals over and over again, just like today we're tired of seeing superhero films over and over
Right.
again. And I think we're going to start to see some new creative ideas happen. And I don't know what it's going to be like, but I do know that there's going to be room for new kinds of filmmaking and new kinds of ideas. That are, I think we're going to see another rise of independent filmmakers.
Yeah.
That's what I think as well. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
And I'll give Debbie a small plug, which she wouldn't. Debbie's also an incredible creative and has a project
Oh, yeah.
that she's been developing and writing that's amazing. I won't pitch it because that's Debbie, but she won't speak of herself that way, but she's amazing. Something that I saw and was blown away by.
Well,
It's my small Debbie plug.
that's the thing, right? I mean, it's the teams that are so important that especially one thing I've been learning as a producer is, yes, I have to take on a lot, but I also spend most of my day going to people, say, how are we going to do this? And then, we know, okay, that's a hole I know how to fill. Okay, now I'm going to go to someone else. Okay, can you help fill this hole? Like how, and I did. Listen, post-production on this thing look really great, but at the same time, I was rotoing myself. I was sitting here doing my own roto, So I just figured out how we're going to do it. So yeah. So again, I think we'll see. We'll keep making more things that are cool. And I loved working with you guys. I really, really appreciate everything you guys brought to this project and teaching us, the guys who are normally in the back rooms doing the post-production, about what it's like to be on set and how to work with a team was a lot of fun with you guys. So thank you guys so much.
We feel the same way. We do.
Yeah.
We really, really enjoyed. I enjoyed immensely. And
Yeah.
I mean, I do have to say, Eric made me laugh every Zoom meeting,
Eric is
every
funny.
call. The things that would come out of Eric's mouth, the tears. Chris, I'm just going to be honest. Before we got on the Zoom, I better go to the
I
bathroom.
warned you
I
about
know,
Eric.
I would pee in my pants. I mean, he would have me in tears, laughing so bad. And the emails, what he sends,
You just have to realize that it's probably not a serious email.
Oh, no, not one of them. Now, and the text messages I would get from him, Ron. Oh, and I have to say the one thing, I laughed and we can go, but I remember the set dressing, the honey to-do list. You remember all the set dressing? Because I was doing all the set dressing, right?
Right.
And the props. He kept sending me list after list. And I laughed because I went to Phil's. Okay, I need this, I need that, I need this. And his house is all Western. Phil called me. He says, "Is there anything you don't want out of my house?" I said, "No, just put it all in the trailer. I'll bring it back. And Eric just kept adding. Well, I remember, it was funny, Chris. He's funny.
He's very funny.
He's very, very, very funny. So I think that was kind of my enjoyment too with him, with his honey to-do list. Debbie, can I have this? Debbie, can I have that? Yes,
Well, the
dear.
thing is, he thought of everything, right? He thought of everything.
He thought of down to the doorbell. The doorbell. There was not one little thing. Debbie, and then we would get on Zooms with the Amazon on my phone, right? Debbie, I don't like that tassel. Debbie, you go pick another tassel. Come back and tell me. Take a snapshot. I felt like I was a set decorator, and that was my production designer.
You were a
and
set
I was
decorator.
picking and choosing. And he says, "Okay, I trust your taste, but just let me double check." Right? He was very enjoyable to work with, is what I'm saying. And Daniel, of course.
Yeah, For sure. I do remember at one point we were down to the wire and we were like trying to figure out how to get the guns, right? We needed guns for these Westerns. And we were like worried about, I was like, oh, we're going to get guns. And we didn't want to bring in armor or anything else. And of course, there's been situations with guns on set recently where we have to be super careful. But Yanyan says, I have an idea. I know where to go. And she went, and she went there. She goes, I have all the guns, every gun you can ever imagine. And she came on set with so many guns and a real bargain deal, actually. And I was like, oh, okay, don't have to worry about that.
She was amazing. Yeah. I see. That's what I'm saying. It's like every time we talk about each individual from the gaffer to the key to Rich, everybody, it was, I just have to say, you're smiling. We're all smiling when we're talking about the crew members. And I think that's a win-win.
Yeah. And even like Jeremy behind the scenes footage, like he was great, all those guys were just helping and working, and bringing on Ben was also very interesting because Ben, as you guys know, he's not normally a second. He is a big commercial director and a big teacher over at USC. So he wanted to be here to look, one, because he's good friends with Daniel, and he said, I'll help you no matter what. But he also wanted to see, like, well, how does this technology work? Because I may want to use it on my next thing.
Yeah, and that's how we pulled in too. Like Morgan, who came in as our production manager. Like a lot of people who were amazing at their job came in, one, because of Debbie, because of you, because of any of us, but also the excitement of doing something that's just new and sort of just sideways of what's the standard. It's exciting. I mean, that's what the industry, sort of what you said before about the industry and the changes. The most exciting part of this job is if you're doing something new, and there's always a evolutionary way to do. I mean, James Cameron, watching even what he did with VFX from the first Avatar to the second, and him building underwater technology because he didn't like. It's such an interesting, exciting part of the job.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It was great. It's funny. I saw Morgan. She came to the premiere and she said, I said, I never read the script because I got on board on this thing so last minute. So I had no idea. I saw a bunch of crazy stuff going on set. I was like, I don't know what's actually being filmed. So it wasn't until I saw it on the screening room that I was like, this is so funny. It's like, yeah. So
she's a cameo.
Yes, and you and Ron and Morgan are the bank customers that are in shock. Shouldn't that be great? Well, listen, guys, thank you so much for being on and for seeing you guys again. It's so great to see you guys again. It feels like forever ago that we were working on that set, but I really appreciate everything you're doing, and thank you for sharing your knowledge with people listening on the podcast so they can really get an idea of what it was like to do that, and the important part of being part of the set. Because I think that this is an example. If you look at what virtual production is, it's really about bringing all of that CG stuff on set. So now you actually have the responsibility of knowing what it's like to be on that set. If you're going to make elements that are on that screen, you better know how it's being shot.
Yes. Yeah. Very much so. Very, very, very much so. Very.
Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And lovely seeing everybody.